The millionaire saw his maid carrying his twin children, and the unbelievable happens. The black Mercedes-Benz glided through the automatic gate of the mansion in Beverly Hills at 6:30 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday. James Anderson switched off the engine and sat for a few moments in the silence of the garage, mentally preparing himself for another night of war. 5 months. 5 months since the twins were born, and his life had transformed into an endless nightmare of crying, fired nannies, and sleepless nights. The house, once a sanctuary after long days at the construction firm, now echoed like a battlefield where he always lost. He climbed the steps to the main entrance with heavy feet, his tie already loosened and his shoulders tense with the weight of another impossible day. He turned the golden key in the lock and pushed open the mahogany door, expecting to be greeted by the desperate screams of Matthew and Gabriel. Silence. James paused on the threshold, frowning. In 5 months, he had never come home to silence. He walked cautiously through the marble foyer, his Italian shoes echoing on the cold floor. The golden light from the crystal chandelier bathed the wood-paneled walls, but the atmosphere was different. Following the almost inaudible sound of a woman's voice, he headed to the living room. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. A brunette woman, about 30 years old, was standing in the center of the room, with Matthew strapped to her back in a makeshift sling. Gabriel rested peacefully in her arms, his little brown eyes fixed on her face as she hummed softly, "Rock-a-bye, baby," on the treetop. The babies weren't crying. For the first time in 5 months, James saw his sons in complete serenity. Matthew was even smiling, his tiny hands playing with the woman's curly hair. "Who are you?" James's voice came out harsher than he intended. The woman turned slowly, avoiding any sudden movements that might startle the children. Her eyes were dark and deep, with a natural gentleness that contrasted with her simple clothes. She wore a plain white t-shirt and worn-out jeans, but she held the babies as if they were precious treasures. "Good evening, Mr. Anderson. I'm Sarah Miller, the new housekeeper. Mrs. Maan Carroll from the agency gave me the address yesterday." Her voice was soft with a slight Midwestern accent that immediately made him think of Anna. "Housekeeper?" James felt irritation rising. "You should be cleaning the house, not touching the children. Where's the nanny?" Sarah remained calm, continuing to rock Gabriel gently. "The girl left early, sir. She said she couldn't take it anymore. The babies were crying so much, Mr. Anderson. I couldn't just leave them like that." She paused, looking him directly in the eye. A child can feel when they're truly loved versus when someone is just doing a job. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. James looked at his sons, cuddled in a stranger's arms, calmer than they had ever been with him. "You're not authorized to touch them." His voice trembled slightly. "They were premature. They need specialized care." Sarah nodded respectfully, but made no move to hand over the babies. "I understand, Mr. Anderson, but they were in so much distress. I just sang to them a little and they calmed down." She hesitated. "It's the same lullaby their mother used to sing, isn't it?" James felt the air leave his lungs. Anna used to sing "Rock-a-bye, baby" throughout her pregnancy, her hands stroking her growing belly as she talked to the babies who were yet to come. How could a stranger know that? "How did you—" He swallowed hard. "How do you know that song?" Sarah smiled sadly, as if holding a painful secret. "Sometimes life puts us in the right place at the right time, Mr. Anderson. Or maybe the people we love continue to watch over us, even after they're gone." At that moment, Matthew let out a crystal-clear laugh, the first sound of happiness James had heard from his sons since their birth. The sound struck him like a lightning bolt, awakening something buried deep in his chest. James looked at Sarah, at the serene babies in her arms, at the living room that for the first time in months didn't resonate with despair. Something had changed in this house. Something impossible to explain, but undeniable to feel. And for the first time since Anna died, James Anderson wondered if maybe, just maybe, love could appear in disguises he had never imagined. 6 months earlier, the corridor of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center was submerged in the typical aseptic brightness of early morning when James received the call that would change his life forever. Anna was in premature labor, 5 weeks ahead of schedule. He drove through the empty streets of Los Angeles like a madman, running red lights and honking furiously at any car that dared to slow him down. The Mercedes skidded as he entered the hospital parking lot, and James ran through the cold marble hallways to the maternity ward. "Mr. Anderson?" The nurse recognized him immediately. Anna had done all her prenatal checkups there. Your wife is in room 12. The obstetrician is already with her. James pushed open the door and found Anna hooked up to countless monitors, her pale face contorted in pain. He squeezed her hand with desperate strength. James, something is wrong. I feel like something is wrong. Her nails dug into his palm. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll find someone with a good heart to take care of our boys. Don't be ridiculous, my love. You're going to be fine. The babies are going to be fine. But even as he spoke, James could see a fear in Anna's eyes that went beyond physical pain. The labor lasted 12 torturous hours. Anna fought like a warrior, but her small body couldn't handle the dual strain. At 2:23 p.m., Matthew and Gabriel came into the world, tiny, purple, and screaming with lungs that seemed too fragile for this world. They're beautiful, James. Anna smiled through her tears, her strength visibly fading. They're going to need so much love. So much love. Those were her last coherent words. The hemorrhage began 20 minutes later. James watched helplessly as a team of doctors fought to save the woman he loved, while his newborn sons were whisked away to the neonatal ICU. In 40 minutes, he had become a father and a widower simultaneously. Still lagers the present. James shook his head, trying to push away the memories that still haunted him every time he looked at the twins. 5 months after the tragedy, he still couldn't hold them for more than a few minutes without being overcome by a toxic mix of desperate love and overwhelming guilt. It was Thursday night, and Sarah was in the kitchen preparing the baby's dinner. She had stayed at the house for 3 consecutive days, an irregular situation he knew he needed to address, but he couldn't bring himself to. For the first time since the twins' birth, the house was peaceful. "Mr. Anderson, may I speak with you?" Sarah appeared at the doorway of his study, wiping her hands on her apron. James looked up from the construction firm's reports. Even after 3 days, he was still surprised by how naturally she moved through the house, as if she had always belonged there. "Of course, come in." Sarah approached with careful steps, her hands clasped in front of her. "I wanted to thank you for trusting me to stay with the children. I know it hasn't been easy for you." She paused. "But they need constant affection right now. They lost their mother so early, and well, you're grieving too." James felt his chest tighten. It was the first time anyone had acknowledged his pain so directly and kindly. "Sarah, I don't know how to be a single father." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Anna was the one who knew everything. She read books, talked to other parents, planned every detail. I just worked and dreamed of the day they would be born. Sarah sat in the chair across from his desk, her eyes full of understanding. "Do you think being a father is about knowing everything?" Her voice was gentle. "Being a father is about being present. It's about trying, making mistakes, and trying again. Matthew and Gabriel don't need perfection, Mr. Anderson. They need real love." "But I can't even hold them without—" James swallowed the lump in his throat. "Every time I look at them, I see Anna dying. I see my failure to save her." Sarah leaned forward, her expression turning more serious. "May I tell you something?" She waited for him to nod. "I knew your wife." James felt the world stop. "What?" "At UCLA Medical Center. I work there on the night shift, cleaning the hallways. Mrs. Anna was there often during her pregnancy because of complications. We would talk in the early hours when she couldn't sleep." Sarah smiled sadly. "She talked about the boys all the time, and about you." James's hands trembled slightly. "Anna never told me she knew you. She didn't want to worry you, but she knew something could go wrong, and she asked one thing of me." Sarah paused, as if the next words were difficult to say. "She asked me to look after the babies if anything happened, to help you learn to be the father they needed." James remained silent for long minutes, processing the revelation. Anna had planned for everything, even knowing she might not survive. His wife always one step ahead, always protecting the family she loved. "Why did you agree?" His voice came out hoarse. "You didn't even know me." Sarah smiled, and for the first time, James saw tears in her eyes. "Because when you truly love someone, it doesn't matter if they're here or not. Love keeps taking care." At that moment, Gabriel's cry echoed through the baby monitor. Instinctively, they both stood up, but Sarah paused at the door. "How about we go together, Mr. Anderson? It's time for you to start learning that being a father isn't about replacing their mother. It's about becoming the father they deserve." James hesitated for a moment, then nodded. For the first time in 5 months, he would go upstairs to soothe his children, not alone but accompanied by someone who carried Anna's last wish in her heart. And maybe, just maybe, it was possible to learn to love without fear. The expert's arrival, The doorbell rang at 10:15 on a Friday morning, interrupting the rare moment of tranquility in which James had managed to bottle feed Gabriel without the baby squirming and crying. Sarah was in the backyard, hanging the twins' tiny clothes on the line, humming softly. James opened the heavy mahogany door to find an elegant woman in her 40s. She wore an impeccable grey Zara suit, carried an Italian leather briefcase, and her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect bun. A pair of Chanel glasses framed blue eyes that seemed to dissect every detail of the house's entrance. "Mr. Anderson, I'm Dr. Patricia Evans, a child psychologist." Her voice was modulated, professional, with a hint of superiority James recognized immediately from the corporate world. "I received a concerning call from your last nanny about the twins' emotional state. I need to speak with you." James frowned. The last nanny had been fired 3 days ago, after Sarah arrived, and proved that the babies could, in fact, be calm and happy. "I haven't requested any consultation, Doctor." Patricia smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I understand, Mr. Anderson, but cases of early childhood emotional trauma are my specialty. I graduated from Yale with a specialization from Harvard, and I serve many families here in Beverly Hills." She took a calculated pause. "I was a very good friend of your wife, Anna. I followed her entire pregnancy." The mention of Anna's name worked like a key. James stepped back, allowing her to enter. "Anna never mentioned you. We were college classmates. We reconnected when she began her pregnancy journey. I was devastated by her death." Patricia walked through the foyer with a suspicious familiarity, her eyes scanning every detail of the decor. "That's why I feel obligated to help with the children." They went into the living room. Gabriel was in his stroller, finally relaxed after his bottle, and Matthew was sleeping peacefully on the sofa, surrounded by pillows. The scene was one of pure domestic tranquility. "Where is the constant crying that was described to me?" Patricia took a tablet out of her briefcase and began taking notes. Babies with emotional trauma do not exhibit periods of calm without professional intervention. They've improved quite a bit in the last few days. "Interesting." She approached Matthew, studying him like a lab specimen. "What kind of intervention has been implemented?" James hesitated. How could he explain that Sarah's mere presence had transformed the house? "We've changed some routines." Patricia nodded, typing quickly. "Mr. Anderson, I need to be direct. Babies who lose their mother at birth often develop what we call early abandonment syndrome. This results in a dysfunctional attachment to substitute figures, excessive crying as a primitive communication mechanism, and resistance to secure bonds with the father." She paused for a breath. "Without proper treatment, these patterns can cause permanent psychological damage. The technical terms fell on James like acid rain: abandonment syndrome, permanent damage, dysfunctional attachment. What are you suggesting?" "A rigorous protocol of emotional rehabilitation, fixed schedules for feeding, sleep, and stimulation, elimination of temporary bonds with non-specialized caregivers." Patricia moved closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "And most importantly, Mr. Anderson, you need to establish yourself as the primary attachment figure. Any external interference can harm this process." At that moment, Sarah came in through the back door, carrying a basket of clean laundry. She stopped when she saw the visitor, greeting her politely. "Good afternoon." Patricia looked her up and down as if she were a threat. "Is this the current nanny?" "Sarah is our housekeeper," James answered quickly. "Ah." The relief in Patricia's voice was palpable. "Excellent. Domestic caregivers should remain focused on their specific duties. Emotional interaction with the babies can create bond confusion." Sarah maintained a neutral expression, but James noticed her shoulders tense slightly. "Mr. Anderson, may I suggest we implement the protocol immediately?" Patricia pulled several printed sheets from her briefcase. "Here is the detailed schedule. Feeding every 4 hours. Specific periods of visual stimulation, sound isolation for proper auditory development." She looked directly at Sarah. "And naturally, interaction only with qualified professionals." James took the papers, glancing over the schedule. It looked more like a technical manual than a guide for caring for babies. "This doesn't seem very human. Mr. Anderson, childhood emotional trauma doesn't respond to conventional human methods. It responds to scientifically proven protocols." Patricia snapped her briefcase shut. "Anna trusted my expertise. She consulted with me constantly during her pregnancy about the emotional preparation for the twins' arrival." Once again, Anna's name was used as a tool for manipulation. James felt torn between the desire to do what was best for his sons and the growing distrust he felt toward this woman. I'll review this information, of course, but I recommend immediate implementation. Every day of delay can compromise the children's emotional development. Patricia walked to the door, then turned. Oh, and Mr. Anderson, if you need recommendations for specialized nannies, I have a list of certified professionals. It's best to avoid improvisations. After she left, James stood in the foyer, the protocol sheets feeling as heavy as a sentence in his hands. Sarah approached quietly. Mr. Anderson, may I say something? He nodded, still unsettled by the visit. That woman, did she really know Mrs. Anna? James looked at Sarah, seeing the same suspicion in her eyes that he felt. Why do you ask? Sarah hesitated, as if struggling with herself. It's just that Mrs. Anna never mentioned any psychologist friend, and in the early mornings at the hospital, she talked a lot about the important people in her life. She talked about you, the babies, her sister, her friends from work. She paused, but never about that woman. James felt a chill. Anna was an open person who shared everything with him. How could such a close friend have never been mentioned? Maybe they were distant friends. Maybe. Sarah didn't sound convinced. But Mr. Anderson, did you see how calm the babies were before she arrived? And now, James looked toward the living room. Gabriel had started to fuss in his stroller, and Matthew was stirring restlessly on the sofa, as if sensing the tension in the air. I just think that before changing everything that's working, it's worth being sure, don't you think? Her words were simple, but they carried a wisdom that the doctor's complex protocols lacked. James looked at the papers in his hands, then at Sarah, then at his sons, who for the first time in days were beginning to show signs of agitation. And for the first time since Patricia had left, James wondered if some people came into his life not to help, but to control. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it would grow. The pressure mounts. Monday, 7 a.m. James was at the construction firm's office reviewing contracts when his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. James Anderson. Mr. Anderson, it's Dr. Evans. Her voice sounded concerned, almost urgent. I need to talk to you about the twins. It's important. What's wrong? Have you implemented the protocol I left with you? James hesitated. Over the past 3 days, he had tried to partially follow Patricia's instructions, but every attempt had resulted in total chaos. The babies cried incessantly when separated from Sarah, refused to follow the rigid feeding schedules, and the house had once again become a living hell. Partially. Mr. Anderson, I need to be frank. I've received troubling information about the influence of unqualified individuals on the children's routine. Her voice took on a cold, professional tone. Premature attachment to temporary figures can cause irreversible damage to their psycho-emotional development. James closed his eyes, feeling the familiar headache forming. Dr. Evans, the children are fine when Sarah is around. That is precisely the problem. The psychologist paused dramatically. Mr. Anderson, may I visit you tonight? I have some information Anna left with me about the specific care she wanted the twins to receive. Anna, always Anna. James felt cornered between his wife's memory and the present well-being of his children. All right, 8 p.m. That evening, Patricia arrived with a stylish assistant carrying an even larger briefcase. They set themselves up in the living room as if it were an official consultation. Mr. Anderson, this is Mariana, my clinical assistant. She will document our conversation for the progress report. Mariana smiled professionally and turned on a recorder. Is recording necessary? Standard protocol for family intervention cases. Patricia opened her briefcase. Now I need to ask you some direct questions. The current housekeeper, Sarah, does she have any training in childcare? No formal training, but is she a registered nurse? Certified in pediatric first aid? Knowledgeable about early neurological development? No, but the babies respond well to her. Patricia and Mariana exchanged a meaningful look. Mr. Anderson, a temporary emotional response does not indicate professional suitability. Patricia pulled a sheet from her briefcase. Anna left me very specific instructions about the care she wanted the twins to receive. James leaned forward. What instructions? She wanted them to be cared for only by certified professionals. She was afraid that well-intentioned but unqualified people might inadvertently harm them. Patricia showed him a handwritten sheet. Here it is, in her own handwriting. James took the paper. It was indeed Anna's handwriting, but something felt off. Anna never wrote so formally, and her concerns during pregnancy were always about love and connection, not certifications. When did she write this? 2 weeks before giving birth. She was very apprehensive about the idea of leaving the children motherless. Patricia leaned in. Mr. Anderson, Anna made me promise I would protect the twins' interests if something happened to her. At that moment, Gabriel's cry echoed from the baby monitor. James instinctively stood up, but Patricia stopped him. Allow me to assess the situation. It's important to observe behavioral patterns without emotional interference. They went up to the nursery together. Gabriel was crying in his crib, while Matthew fussed in his. Sarah was nowhere in sight. Where is the housekeeper? Patricia asked. She must be in the kitchen preparing their bottles. Patricia approached Gabriel, analyzing him like a clinical case. Typical distress cry, high frequency, irregular pattern. She took notes on her tablet. Clearly an emotional distress. Sarah, James called out. Sarah appeared quickly, carrying 2 bottles. Upon seeing her, Gabriel stopped crying immediately, reaching his little arms out to her. Interesting, Patricia observed the reaction. Classic behavioral dependency. The child has developed a pathological attachment to the non-maternal figure. Sarah took Gabriel into her arms, and he instantly calmed down. She did the same with Matthew, and within seconds both babies were quiet. This proves exactly what I'm saying. Patricia turned to James. This excessive dependency compromises the development of emotional autonomy. These babies need to learn to self-soothe without the need for constant external stimulus. Sarah held the babies, but James noticed her hands were trembling slightly. Doctor, with all due respect, they're 5-month-old babies. Isn't it natural for them to need affection? Patricia gave her a cold stare. Miss, do you have a degree in child psychology? No, but then I suggest you leave the decisions about these children's emotional development to someone who actually understands the subject. James felt the tension in the room rise dangerously. Sarah looked down, clearly intimidated, but continued to hold the babies tenderly. Mr. Anderson, I need to make a formal recommendation. Patricia turned her full attention back to him. For the psychological well-being of the twins, I suggest you limit the current housekeeper's contact with the children to strictly necessary care, feeding and hygiene only, with no emotional interaction. And if they cry, they will learn to self-regulate. It's a fundamental part of healthy development. James looked at Sarah, who continued to cradle his sons with genuine love, and then at Patricia, who saw them as clinical cases, 2 completely opposing views on what his children needed. I'll consider your recommendation. Mr. Anderson, this isn't a suggestion. As a certified professional who has followed this case since the pregnancy, I can assure you it's the only scientifically validated approach. Patricia closed her tablet firmly. Anna trusted my professional judgment. I hope you will too. After they left, James stood in the nursery, watching Sarah place the twins back in their cribs. They protested at first, but she hummed softly until they fell asleep. Mr. Anderson, if you think it's best that I don't touch the children anymore, I understand. Her voice was sad but resigned. I only want what's best for them. James looked at his peacefully sleeping sons, and then at the woman who had brought peace to his home for the first time in months. An impossible choice lay before him: follow the cold science of a professional, or trust the human warmth of a simple woman his children clearly loved. And for the first time, James began to wonder if Anna had really written that letter, or if someone was using his wife's memory to manipulate him. The answer to that question would change everything. The protocol of pain. Tuesday, 6 a.m. James woke to the sound of desperate screams coming from the twins' room. It was the 3rd day of rigorously implementing Patricia's protocol, and the house had transformed into a constant nightmare. He staggered up the stairs, exhausted after another night of 2 fragmented hours of sleep. In the hallway, he found Sarah standing before the nursery door, her fists clenched, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Anderson, please. Her voice was broken. They're suffering so much. James walked past her without a word, forcing himself to follow the psychologist's instructions. Do not give in to the emotional demand. Self-regulation is fundamental for healthy development. Patricia's words echoed in his mind like a cruel mantra. Gabriel was purple from crying so hard, his little body trembling with exhaustion. Matthew had thrown up and was covered in his own spit-up, yet he still cried with an intensity that seemed impossible for such small lungs. James picked up Gabriel, trying to calm him with the mechanical movements he had learned from books. The baby continued to cry, struggling in his arms as if fighting against a prison. Self-regulation. he muttered to himself. They need to learn to self-regulate. But 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Gabriel's cries grew hoarse from the effort, and Matthew developed a violent hiccup that made his small body convulse. "I can't take it anymore," Sarah whispered from the doorway. "Please, Mr. Anderson, just let me sing to them." "No," James's voice came out louder than he intended. The doctor was clear. "Emotional interaction harms the development of autonomy." Sarah flinched, as if she'd been slapped. "Mr. Anderson, they're babies. Babies need love, not autonomy." "You don't understand." James turned to her, Gabriel still struggling in his arms. "They've already lost their mother. If I let them get attached to you and then you leave, they'll suffer even more." "Who said anything about me leaving?" The question hung in the air as Gabriel cried and Matthew hiccuped, soaked in vomit and tears. James looked at Sarah, at his desperate sons, at his own hands trembling with exhaustion and uncertainty. For a moment, the scientific protocol seemed absurdly cruel in the face of the real suffering of real children. "The doctor said," he began. "The doctor isn't here in the middle of the night when they're crying. The doctor doesn't see them like this." Sarah took a step forward. "Mr. Anderson, look at them. Really look at them. Is this right?" Gabriel started coughing between sobs, and James felt a surge of panic. What if the baby couldn't breathe properly? What if this whole protocol was... The phone rang. James rushed to answer, still holding Gabriel. "James Anderson. Mr. Anderson. It's Dr. Evans. How is the protocol progressing?" James looked at Gabriel in his arms, at Matthew in the crib, at Sarah in the doorway with tears in her eyes. They won't stop crying." "Excellent. That's exactly what we expected." Patricia's voice sounded satisfied. "They are testing the boundaries. It's crucial to remain firm. How long has the continuous crying lasted? 3 hours this morning? 4 last night. Perfect. It shows they're being forced to develop self-regulation. Continue exactly as you are." James looked at Gabriel, whose face was red and swollen from crying. "Dr. Evans, what if there's a medical issue? They seem to be in pain." "Mr. Anderson, temporary suffering is a necessary part of the emotional development process." Her voice took on a condescending tone. "If you give in now, all progress will be lost. Anna trusted my expertise. You should too. But Anna never saw the babies like this. Anna consulted me constantly about parenting methods during her pregnancy. She knew firmness would be necessary." Patricia paused. "Mr. Anderson, may I suggest you completely restrict the housekeeper's interaction with the children? Her presence is creating emotional confusion." James looked at Sarah, who remained at the door, her hands outstretched toward the babies, as if her whole body was pleading to comfort them. "What do you mean, restrict?" "She should not enter the children's room. She should not speak to them, hum, or make any kind of prolonged eye contact. Her role must be strictly domestic." Patricia's voice was firm. "It's the only way to break the pathological dependency they've developed." Gabriel coughed again, and James felt his heart break. "How long is this going to last?" "Weeks, possibly months. Early emotional dependency is difficult to break, but it's essential for healthy development." Patricia paused. "Mr. Anderson, if you don't follow the protocol rigorously, I may be forced to consider other measures to protect the children's well-being." "What other measures?" "Consultation with specialized social workers. Sometimes grieving families need additional support to make rational decisions about childcare." The threat was subtle but clear. James felt a chill run down his spine. "I understand." "Excellent. Call me if you need any clarification. And remember, absolute firmness. It's for their own good." James hung up and stood in the room, with Gabriel finally too exhausted to cry anymore, just whimpering miserably in his arms. Matthew had fallen asleep from sheer exhaustion, but even in sleep his lips trembled. "Mr. Anderson," Sarah whispered, "this can't be right. Mrs. Hannah would never want to see her children like this." He looked at her, at the genuine pain in her eyes, at the way her entire body leaned toward the babies. "Sarah, I need you to stay away from the children for a while." The words came out like daggers. Sarah recoiled as if she'd been physically wounded. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, it's just medical protocol." Sarah nodded slowly, tears now falling freely. "All right, Mr. Anderson. If it's for the good of the children." She turned to leave, then stopped. "But Mr. Anderson, when they're crying in the middle of the night and you doubt if this is right, remember one thing. Mrs. Anna made me a different promise than the one that doctor is talking about." "What promise?" "She asked me to never let them feel abandoned, to always remind them that they are loved." Sarah wiped her eyes. "And look at them now, Mr. Anderson. Look at them and tell me if they feel loved." With that, she left, leaving James alone with his sons in the room that had become an emotional prison. Gabriel whimpered in his arms, and James felt a tear run down his own face. For the first time, he wondered if he was saving his children or destroying them. The doubt hurt more than any cry. The breaking point. Thursday, 3 a.m. James woke not to the sound of the twins crying, but to silence. After 4 days of the rigorous protocol, the silence had become more terrifying than any scream. He tiptoed upstairs, his heart pounding. In the nursery, he found Matthew and Gabriel awake in their cribs, but not crying, just staring at the ceiling with empty eyes, as if they had given up on expecting comfort. Gabriel turned his head as James approached, but there was no smile, no reaching of his little arms, just a tired look that seemed haunted for a 5-month-old baby. "Hey, my love," James whispered, lifting him into his arms. Gabriel didn't resist, but he didn't cuddle either. He remained limp in his arms, like a doll. Matthew did the same when James picked him up with his other arm. They were broken. His own children had given up on seeking love. James carried them both downstairs, desperate to find some way to reconnect with them. In the kitchen, he found Sarah sitting at the table, a cup of cold coffee in her hands. She hadn't slept. That much was obvious from her red eyes and the posture of someone who had spent the night listening to suffering. "Mr. Anderson?" She stood up when she saw him with the babies. "Are they all right?" "I don't know." His voice came out hoarse. "They've stopped crying, but I don't know if that's a good thing." Sarah approached cautiously, as if expecting to be sent away again. Gabriel saw her, and for the first time in days, he reacted. He didn't cry or smile, but his eyes fixed on her with a desperate intensity. May I see them?" James nodded, too exhausted to follow any more protocols. Sarah slowly reached out her hand to Gabriel. The baby grabbed her finger with a desperate strength, like a drowning person clinging to a life raft. Matthew did the same with her other hand. "Hello, my little angels," she whispered. "Sarah's here." And then, for the first time in 4 days, Gabriel smiled. Not a big smile, just a subtle curve of his lips, but it was like seeing the sun rise after an endless storm. James felt something inside his chest shatter. "Sarah, He stopped, his voice failing him. "I think I've made a terrible mistake. You were trying to do what's best for the children." "No, I was trying to follow the instructions of someone who never loved them." James looked at his sons, still clinging to Sarah's fingers. "They stopped crying because they gave up on hoping for love." Sarah moved closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Mr. Anderson, can I say something that's been on my heart for days?" "Of course." "That doctor. She didn't know Mrs. Anna, at least not in the way she claims." James frowned. "Why are you so sure?" "Because Mrs. Anna told me everything. About her fear of dying in childbirth, about wanting the babies to be raised with so much love, about how you were a good man, but would need to learn how to show affection." Sarah paused. "But most of all, she talked about a psychologist who kept giving her unsolicited opinions during her pregnancy." James's heart stopped. "What?" "Mrs. Anna said there was a woman who wouldn't stop calling, showing up at her appointments uninvited, giving her parenting advice that made her anxious." Sarah looked him straight in the eye. She said the woman was strange, obsessive, that she seemed overly interested in her pregnancy. James felt the world spin. The pieces began to fall into place. Patricia's unsolicited visits, her detailed knowledge of the house, the instructions that went against everything Anna truly believed about love and parenting. "Sarah, are you sure?" "Absolutely. Mrs. Anna even showed me the woman's business card once, said she was going to file a complaint with the psychology board." Sarah hesitated. The name was Patricia something. James felt sick. He had handed his children over to a woman Anna considered a threat. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "I tried, but you were hurting so much, and she spoke in Mrs. Anna's name." Sarah looked down. "I should have insisted." Gabriel started to fuss, and instinctively Sarah took him in her arms. He immediately calmed down, snuggling against her as if he had come home. "Mr. Anderson, may I suggest something?" "Anything. What if we forget all these protocols and just love these children, in the simple, true way that Mrs. Anna wanted?" James looked at Gabriel in Sarah's arms, at Matthew reaching for her too, at the peace returning to their tiny faces. "Would you stay, even after how I've treated you?" Sarah smiled, finally taking Matthew as well. "Mr. Anderson, I promised Mrs. Anna I would look after them until you learn to be the father they need." She looked at him kindly. "And I think you've just learned the most important lesson." "What's that?" "That love doesn't need a protocol. It just needs to be real." James felt tears of relief stream down his face as he watched his children come back to life in the arms of the woman Anna had chosen to protect them. For the first time in days, he knew with certainty that he had made the right decision. Now all that was left was to confront the lie that had almost destroyed his family. The truth unveiled. Friday, 2 p.m. James was at the construction office when his phone rang. It was Carla, his sister-in-law, Anna's sister. "James, I found something you need to see. Can I come by your house tonight?" "What is it?" "Some of Anna's things were at our mom's house. There's a box of papers she asked me to keep for her toward the end of her pregnancy." Carla's voice sounded tense. "There are some strange documents." At 8 p.m., Carla arrived at the mansion carrying a cardboard box. James, Sarah, and she sat down in the dining room, while the twins slept peacefully in their double stroller nearby. "Anna gave me this 2 weeks before she passed," Carla began, opening the box. "She said if anything happened to her, I should give it to you. At the time I thought it was just pregnancy jitters, but..." She pulled out a folder with documents organized chronologically. "James, do you know a Dr. Patricia Evans?" The name landed like a hammer in the room. "Unfortunately, yes. Why?" Carla handed him a series of papers. Anna was collecting evidence against her. James began to read, and with each page his stomach churned more. They were detailed records of all the unsolicited contact Patricia had made during Anna's pregnancy. Constant calls, appearances at doctor's appointments, suggestions about preparing for childbirth, questionnaires about the family's financial situation. "Look at this." Carla pointed to a specific page. "Anna noted every time that woman asked about the two of you, about your assets, about how you would handle single fatherhood if something happened to her." Sarah leaned in to get a better look. "My God, she was investigating you." "There's more," Carla continued, turning pages. "Anna found out Patricia didn't graduate from where she claimed. She called Yale and Harvard. There's no record of her at either university." James felt the floor drop out from under him. "That's impossible. She has an office, she sees patients. Anna looked into that too." Carla showed him more papers. "She rents the office on short-term leases. She changes addresses constantly. And look at this." Carla pulled a printout of a local newspaper article from the folder. "Woman investigated for defrauding vulnerable families." It's from 2 years ago in Chicago. The woman in the photo is her. James took the newspaper with trembling hands. It was definitely Patricia, a few years younger but unmistakable. The suspect presented herself as a psychologist specializing in family trauma and approached grieving families or those in emotionally vulnerable situations. After gaining the victim's trust, she would employ schemes of emotional blackmail and psychological manipulation to obtain financial benefits or control over important family decisions. James read aloud. Sarah covered her mouth, horrified. "She was doing the same thing to you." "There's a letter," Carla said softly. "Anna wrote it to you, James. To be delivered only if she didn't survive." With shaking hands, James opened the sealed envelope. Anna's unmistakable handwriting covered 3 pages of the scented stationery he recognized immediately. It was the paper she used for special occasions. "My love, if you're reading this, it means our babies have arrived in the world, and I couldn't stay to watch them grow. My heart is broken just thinking about it, but I need you to know some important things. First, you are going to be a wonderful father. I know you're scared. I know you think you don't know how to take care of babies, but the love you have for them will teach you everything you need to know. Trust your heart. Second, there is a woman named Patricia Evans who has been bothering me throughout my pregnancy. She is not who she says she is, James. She is dangerous. If she shows up after I'm gone, don't believe anything she says about me or the babies. She wants to control our family for reasons I don't fully understand yet, but I know they are bad. Third, there is a woman at UCLA Medical Center named Sarah Miller. She works on the night cleaning crew, but she has a heart of gold. In the early mornings when I was admitted, she comforted me, talked to me, sang to the babies in my belly. James, she is an angel in disguise. If anything happens to me, find her. Ask her to help you take care of our children until you learn how to do it on your own. Sarah promised me she would look after them, and I trust her completely. You should trust her too. And finally, my love, our children are going to need so much love. Not protocols, not rigid rules, not cold science. They are going to need to be held, to be cuddled, to be sung silly lullabies, to have their boo-boos kissed, to have you make funny voices when you read them stories. They are going to need you to be present, to show love every day, to not be ashamed of being affectionate. You are a wonderful man, James, but sometimes you hide your feelings thinking it makes you stronger. With our children, be vulnerable. Be human. Be the dad they deserve. I will love all three of you forever, even if I'm not there. Your Anna. James finished reading, tears streaming freely down his face. Beside him, Sarah was also crying, and Carla held his hand tightly. She knew, he whispered. Anna knew everything. She knew about Patricia. She knew about Sarah. She knew I would need to learn how to be a father. And she was right about everything, Sarah said softly. Mrs. Anna was very wise. James looked at the twins sleeping peacefully in the stroller, and then at Sarah, who had fulfilled the promise made to his wife, even when he had treated her so poorly. Sarah, did you come looking for me because of the promise to Anna? Yes, Mr. Anderson. She gave me your address, said that when the babies were born I should show up and offer my services as a housekeeper. Sarah smiled through her tears. She said you would need help, but that you wouldn't accept it at first, that it would have to be gradual until you trusted me. And the song? The lullaby. Mrs. Anna sang it every night at the hospital. The babies would move so much in her belly when she sang. Sarah laughed softly. She said they would recognize it. James stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where Anna used to walk during her pregnancy. His wife had orchestrated everything, even knowing she might not survive. She had protected her sons and guided her husband through her own death. Carla, I need a favor. Anything. Help me file a police report against that woman. She can't keep doing this to other families. I've already separated all the documents. We can go to the station tomorrow morning. James turned to Sarah, who was adjusting the baby's blankets with infinite care. Sarah, will you stay with us? Not as a housekeeper, as a family. Sarah looked at him, surprised. Mr. Anderson, Anna chose you to take care of our sons, and she was right about everything. James moved closer. You saved my children. You saved me too. If you'll accept, I'd like you to be the mother they need. Sarah looked at the twins, then at James, and then at Carla, who nodded in encouragement. It would be an honor, Mr. Anderson. And for the first time since Anna died, James felt that his family was whole again, not in the same way, but in a way that was equally true and full of love. Anna had watched over them until the very end. The confrontation Saturday, 10 a.m. James was at the police station with Carla and all the documents Anna had gathered against Patricia when his phone rang. It was her. Mr. Anderson, I need to make an urgent follow-up visit. Are the twins responding well to the protocol? James took a deep breath, controlling his rage. Actually, Dr. Evans, I need to speak with you as well. Can you come to my house at 3 p.m.? Of course. I'm glad to see you're taking the treatment seriously. James hung up and turned to the detective. Mr. Anderson, with this evidence and the history we've found in our system, we can arrest her for fraud, practicing without a license, and endangering a minor. The detective glanced through the documents. But it would be better if we could get a recorded confession. Can I use my phone to record? You can, but be careful. If she suspects anything, she could flee again. At 3 p.m. sharp, Patricia arrived at the mansion with Mariana, her assistant. They walked in confidently, carrying briefcases and equipment. Mr. Anderson, how are my little patients? Patricia smiled professionally. James led them into the living room, where Sarah was playing peacefully with the twins on the rug. Matthew was laughing as she made funny faces at him, and Gabriel was sitting in her lap, pulling on her curly hair. Patricia's smile vanished instantly. Mr. Anderson, what is the meaning of this? I was very clear about keeping the housekeeper away from the children. Sit down, Dr. Evans. I need to clarify a few things with you. Patricia and Mariana sat, visibly tense. James discreetly activated the recorder on his phone. Dr. Evans, I'd like you to tell me again about your relationship with my wife, Anna. As I told you, we were friends from college. We reconnected during her pregnancy. Patricia spoke quickly, nervously. Why do you ask? Because I've spoken with Anna's family and no one remembers you. Not from college, not from the pregnancy. Patricia's face paled slightly. We were distant acquaintances. Anna was a private person. James pulled Anna's original letter from the folder. This is my wife's handwriting. The letter you showed me last week. Are you sure it was written by the same person? Patricia glanced at the papers, and James saw panic in her eyes. Well, people sometimes write differently when they're stressed. Dr. Evans, where did you go to college? Yale, as I told you. James pulled another paper from the folder, the confirmation from Yale that there was no record of her. Yale confirms there was never a student named Patricia Evans in the psychology program. Neither did Harvard. Patricia stood up abruptly. Mr. Anderson, I don't know what game you're playing, but it's not a game, Patricia. James stood up as well, using her first name without the title. It's the truth. You're not a psychologist. You've been trying to scam my family. Mariana also stood up, visibly uncomfortable. Dr. Evans, maybe we should just go. Shut up, Patricia snapped at her assistant, completely losing her professional composure. You don't understand anything. James watched as the mask finally fell. Why, Patricia? Why did you do this to my family? Patricia looked at him, then at Sarah with the babies, and something dark crossed her eyes. Because families like yours don't deserve to have it so easy. Her voice was thick with bitterness. You have money, a beautiful house, healthy children, and you don't even know how to appreciate it. There are women who would give anything for that chance. What chance? To raise those children properly, Patricia pointed at the twins. Anna was dead. You had no idea how to be a father, and those children were going to end up traumatized or abandoned. I could have taken better care of them than anyone. The truth was finally out. James felt sick to his stomach. You wanted to take my children. I wanted to save them from you. Patricia lost all control. From your despair, your incompetence, from this, she gestured at Sarah, this unqualified woman you let infiltrate the family. Sarah rose slowly, instinctively shielding the babies. You didn't know, Mrs. Anna, she said firmly. Mrs. Anna told me about you, about how you bothered her, how you showed up uninvited, how you asked strange questions about the family. Patricia turned to Sarah with hatred in her eyes. And who are you to talk about Anna? Just some housekeeper who took advantage of the situation. I'm the one Anna chose to take care of her children, Sarah replied with dignity. And unlike you, I actually love these children. Love? Patricia laughed bitterly. What do you know about raising children? You live in a working-class neighborhood. You have no education, no resources. These children deserve the best. They deserve to be loved, Sarah said simply. And I have that to give. Patricia turned back to James. That woman will ruin your children. They'll grow up spoiled, without discipline, without structure. Anna told me she was afraid of exactly that. Anna never told you that, James said coldly, because Anna never trusted you. In fact, she was gathering evidence to report you to the Board of Psychology. Patricia fell silent for a moment, then exploded. Anna was a romantic fool who believed in fairy tales. She was going to die anyway, everyone knew it. And these children were going to be left orphaned with an absent father and an incompetent nanny. I could have given them a structured life, a quality education, opportunities that this person could never offer. You forged documents, lied about your education, and manipulated my grief to try to infiltrate my family, James said. That's not taking care of children. That's a crime. Patricia looked around, finally realizing she had completely incriminated herself. You can't prove anything. James held up his phone. Yes, I can. It's all recorded. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Carla entered with 2 police officers. Patricia Evans, one of the officers said, you are under arrest for fraud, illegal practice of a profession, and attempted child endangerment. As they handcuffed her, Patricia screamed one last time, you'll regret this. These children will grow up maladjusted. You'll see I was right. The only maladjusted people here are the ones who try to steal other people's children, Sarah said calmly, still holding the twins. After Patricia was taken away, silence fell over the house. James went to Sarah, who was trembling. Are you okay? Yes, Mr. Anderson. She looked at the babies. But what a terrible woman. Thank God Mrs. Anna realized the danger. James hugged Sarah and the twins all together. Anna protected us even after she was gone. And you kept the promise you made to her. And I'll keep fulfilling it, Sarah said softly. These children are going to grow up knowing they are loved, just like Mrs. Anna wanted. James smiled, finally free from the weight of manipulation and lies. His family was safe, and love had won. 6 months later, the mansion's garden in Beverly Hills was unrecognizable. Where there once was only immaculate lawn and ornamental plants, there was now a small but colorful playground, with a low slide, scattered toys, and a sandbox where Matthew and Gabriel, now almost a year old, crawled and explored everything with the typical curiosity of their age. James came home from work at 5:30 p.m., much earlier than he used to before Sarah's arrival. He found the scene that had become his favorite. Sarah sitting on the grass with Gabriel in her lap trying to eat sand, unsuccessfully thanks to her watchful eye, while Matthew played with a plastic rocking horse. How were the boys today? James approached, loosening his tie. Great. Gabriel is almost walking, look. Sarah stood the baby up, holding his little hands. Gabriel took 3 wobbly steps before sitting down on the grass, laughing at his own achievement. "He's growing up too fast," James said, sitting on the grass beside her. In the past few months, many things had changed in James Anderson's life. He had learned to come home earlier, to play on the floor, to make funny voices when telling stories, to bathe the twins without despairing when they splashed water everywhere. More importantly, he had learned to show affection without feeling vulnerable. "Mr. Anderson," Sarah said, as Matthew crawled over to play with his father's shoe, "can I say something?" "Always. You've become a wonderful father. Mrs. Anna would be so proud." James smiled, scooping Matthew into his arms. "I learned from a good teacher. In the last few months, Sarah had moved into one of the guest rooms, initially as a temporary measure after the trauma with Patricia, but it became permanent when everyone realized she had become an essential part of the family. "Sarah," James said, his voice more serious, "I need to talk about something important." She looked at him attentively. "The children are going to need stability, to know that the people they love aren't going to disappear." He paused. "And I need that too." Sarah sat still, Gabriel playing with her hair. "What are you trying to say? That I would like you to consider staying with us forever? Not as an employee, not as a favor for the promise you made to Anna." James took a deep breath. "As family." Sarah looked at him surprised. "Mr. Anderson, I know it's complicated. I know we come from different worlds, that people will talk." James leaned forward. "But in these months you've become more than a caregiver for my children. You've become someone I admire, respect, and—" He hesitated. "And love." The words hung in the air as Gabriel pulled on Sarah's hair and Matthew tried to take off James's shoes. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked softly. "Because I love you all very much too. I love the children as if they were my own. And I love you too." She smiled shyly. "But I don't want it to be just out of gratitude or because it's convenient for the family." James moved closer. "It's not gratitude, Sarah. It's real love. Anna taught me through you that love has no social class, no protocol, no need to be complicated." He gently touched her face. "You taught me that one becomes a father, that family is built, and that sometimes the people we love most arrive in ways we never expect." Sarah felt tears well up in her eyes. "What if it doesn't work? What if it does?" James smiled. "Anna chose you to take care of her children. I'm choosing you to be my wife and the mother they need." Gabriel, as if understanding the importance of the moment, clapped his hands and laughed. Matthew copied his brother, and soon the two were having a little party. "I think they approve," Sarah laughed through her tears. "So is that a yes?" Sarah looked at the twins, at James, at the garden that had transformed from a showpiece into a real home. "It's a yes, Mr. Anderson. Hey, it's a yes to everything." James kissed her softly, while Matthew and Gabriel continued their clapping party, as if they knew something very special had just happened in their lives. 2 years later, Scarsdale, New York. The new house was smaller than the mansion, but infinitely cozier. 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen where Sarah cooked while singing, a living room where the children's toys shared space with the furniture, and a huge backyard where James had built a treehouse. It was Saturday morning, and the family was gathered in the kitchen. Matthew and Gabriel, now 3 years old, were eating breakfast at a low table just for them, while Sarah finished making pancakes. "Dad, can I go play outside?" Matthew asked, his mouth smeared with jam. "You can, but only after you finish eating." James was different, more relaxed, more present. He had delegated more responsibilities at the construction firm and had learned that being a good father was more important than being a perfect businessman. "Mama, Sarah, Gabriel ate my pancake," Matthew complained. James smiled, hearing the boys call Sarah Mama. It had happened naturally, without any forcing. They knew they had a mama in heaven who loved them very much, but Sarah was the everyday mom, the one whose lap they sought when they got hurt, the one who told bedtime stories. "Gabriel, don't take your brother's food," Sarah said gently, making another pancake for Matthew. At that moment she rested a hand on her slightly rounded belly, a sign that the family would soon be growing a little larger. "How are you feeling today?" James asked, coming up to hug her from behind. "Good. The baby is calmer today. I hope it's a girl. The boys are excited to have a little sister. It doesn't matter what it is." Sarah turned in his arms. "It will be love just the same." James kissed her forehead. "Just like the 3 of you. The best things that ever happened to me." Matthew and Gabriel finished eating and ran out into the backyard. James and Sarah stayed in the kitchen, him helping with the dishes while she organized things for lunch. "Mr. Henderson," she said, still using the affectionate term from their early days. "Sometimes I wonder if Mrs. Anna approves of our decisions." James stopped drying the dishes and looked at her. "I'm sure she does. Look around, Sarah. Look at the children laughing outside. Look at our family growing. Look at how we've all learned to love without fear." He smiled. "Anna orchestrated all of this. She knew exactly what she was doing when she asked you to take care of us." Sarah touched her belly, where the baby who would be raised in love from day one was growing, without trauma, without loss, without fear. "What will we name him? Or her? If it's a girl?" "Anna," they said together, and then they laughed. "And if it's a boy?" "Gabriel has already suggested Superman," James laughed. "But maybe we should consider something more traditional." Outside, Matthew shouted with joy as he managed to climb into the treehouse by himself, while Gabriel clapped for his brother. The scene was one of pure domestic happiness. "Mr. Anderson, do you regret anything?" Sarah asked. James thought for a moment. "I regret taking so long to trust what Anna knew from the beginning, that you were exactly what our family needed." He hugged her tighter. "I regret almost losing you all because I was scared. But you didn't lose us." "No, and now I never will." They stood there, holding each other in the sunny kitchen, listening to the children's laughter from the yard, feeling the baby move in Sarah's belly, and knowing that Anna was blessing them from wherever she was. The simple house in Scarsdale was everything the mansion in Beverly Hills could never be. A true home, built with love, patience, and the wisdom of a woman who knew how to protect her family, even after death. And when the phone rang that afternoon, a work call that could wait, James simply hung up and went back to the garden, where his children needed someone to push the swing, because he had finally learned that the most important things in life couldn't be postponed. Love was there every day waiting to be lived. Epilogue. Full circle 5 years later. Little Anna, now 4, ran through the yard of the house in Scarsdale, chasing her brothers Matthew and Gabriel, who at 8 years old had become her protectors and partners in adventure. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the family had gathered for the monthly barbecue that had become a tradition. James, now with a few grey hairs at his temples, was at the grill watching his children play. Sarah, 6 months pregnant with their 4th child, sat on the porch talking with Carla, who had become more than a sister-in-law. She was the beloved aunt who completed their family circle. "Uncle James," Carla's daughter, Eleanor, who was 5, ran up to him. "Can I help with the barbecue?" "Of course, sweetheart. Just stay away from the fire." The scene was one of absolute domestic normalcy, but for James, it represented a personal revolution. He had become the father Anna had dreamed of, present, affectionate, willing to play on the floor and make funny voices. "Daddy," little Anna approached, carrying her favorite doll. "Clara wants some barbecue too." "Oh, she does." James knelt down to his daughter's level. "And what does Clara like to eat?" "Sausage, just like Gabriel." James laughed, serving a small piece of sausage onto the doll's plate that Anna was holding. "There you go. Now Clara can eat with us." The little girl ran off, happy to feed her doll. James watched her with a full heart. Little Anna had her mother's eyes and Sarah's smile, a perfect combination of heritage and choice. "Mr. Anderson," Sarah approached, her hand on her belly. "Can I steal you for a minute?" "Always." They walked to the back of the yard, where James had planted a white rose bush in memory of the first Anna. The bush had grown lush and bloomed abundantly every spring. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, as she always did when the anniversary of Anna's death approached. "At peace," James answered honestly. For the first time in years, completely at peace. It was true. The pain of the loss had never completely disappeared, but it had transformed into something different. Gratitude. Gratitude for the time they had together, for the children she gave him, for the wisdom she showed even in her final moments. "I talk to her sometimes," Sarah confessed. "I tell her how the children are growing, how you've become the father she knew you could be." "And what do you think she would say back?" Sarah smiled. "That she always knew it would turn out okay, that love finds a way." Just then Matthew came running toward them. "Dad, Mom, come see. Gabriel taught Anna how to climb the treehouse." They hurried to the center of the yard, where they found Gabriel holding little Anna's hand as she carefully climbed the steps of the little house James had built. "Look, Mommy," Anna shouted from the top. "I'm brave like my brothers." "Yes, you are, my love," Sarah called back. "But come down slowly." James watched the scene and felt something settle in his chest. His 3 children playing together, safe, loved, protected. Sarah by his side, expecting the 4th child of the family he never imagined he would have. "You know what I think about sometimes," he said to Sarah. What? That Anna didn't just choose you to take care of the children. She chose you to teach me how to be happy again. Sarah moved closer and kissed him softly. And she chose you to teach me that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, commitment, and waking up every day deciding to love. The children's joyful shouts filled the yard as they played, and James knew with absolute certainty that Anna was there, somehow, approving of everything they had built. That night, after the children were asleep, James and Sarah sat on the porch looking at the stars. "What will we name this one?" Sarah asked, stroking her belly. "If it's a girl, how about Helen?" It was Anna's mother's name. "And if it's a boy," James thought for a moment, "Charles, in honor of the grandfather they never knew, but mostly because it's a strong name, the name of someone who builds good things." Sarah nodded, satisfied. "Helen, or Charles Anderson. I like the sound of it." They sat in a comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the suburban neighborhood that had become their haven. The simple house in Scarsdale was full of life, love, and future. "Mr. Anderson," Sarah said softly, "thank you." "For what?" "For believing that love can appear in disguises we never expect, for letting a stranger into the heart of your family." She paused. "For choosing me to be the mother of your children." James kissed her forehead. "I'm the one who should be thanking you, for keeping the promise you made to Anna, for saving my children, for teaching me that being a father is about presence, not perfection." He took her hand. "For turning our house into a home." Inside they heard little Anna cry out. Without a second thought they both got up to see what was wrong, not because it was an obligation, but because it was instinct. It was love. They found the little girl sitting up in bed hugging her doll. "I had a bad dream," she said in her tiny voice. "Come here, my love." Sarah took her in her arms. "Do you want to tell Mommy about it? I dreamed that you left and I was all alone." James felt his heart clench. Even in a family full of love, children still feared abandonment. "Anna, look at me," he said, sitting on the bed beside them. "Mommy and Daddy are never going to leave you alone, never. We will always be here taking care of you and your brothers. Promise?" "We promise," they said together. Anna calmed down and fell back asleep between them in the king-sized bed, as they sometimes did when one of the children needed extra security. Lying there, with his little girl sleeping between him and Sarah, James thought about how life had given him so much more than he had ever dared to dream. He had lost Anna, but he had gained Sarah. He had almost lost the twins to a manipulator, but he had found an even bigger and stronger family. And he knew with absolute certainty that somewhere Anna approved of every choice they had made, every moment of happiness they had built on the foundation of love she had left behind. The angel in disguise had fulfilled her mission. The family was complete, protected, and full of love. And when James finally fell asleep that night, he dreamed of Anna smiling, satisfied with the work she had started and that now flourished in 3 generations of true love. The circle was complete.